This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. On today's show, we've got an NXT superstar showing up in AEW. Sonata had some very harsh words for this AEW wrestler, as well as more CM Punk news. Always CM Punk news and some WWE pay-per-view news. So you're going to want to stick around for all of that. Of course, we're going to take a look at the Forbidden Door pay-per-view, give our predictions, going to take a look at the wonderful world of wrestling and go around the horn, taking a peek at AEW, WWE. Maybe we'll sprinkle some Impact in there. We've got a jam-packed show. You're going to want to stick around. Doing it with me, as always, he's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Yeah, so much going on. Even highlighting the fact that a WWE superstar went down to NXT and had a great match with a young superstar. Give credit to Seth Rollins, who really is truly a fighting champion. It was a good week of wrestling, highlighted by a lot of good things with WWE, AEW, storylines, the go-home show for Forbidden Door. I can't wait to recap it. Where are we starting?
Let's start off with Raw, because I thought something interesting happened. The news breaking late in the day on Monday and then basically coming out all day Tuesday was Vince McMahon, and Vince having an incredibly heavy hand in the beginning of Raw. Basically, Vince walked into creative and ripped up at least the first 30 minutes, and he completely revamped it, and I loved it. I haven't been able to say that I've loved Vince's creative decisions in a long time, but I loved what Vince did. Originally, what we were supposed to have is a returning Ciampa challenging Seth Rollins, and they were supposed to get a ton of time for an open challenge match. And instead, what we got a beatdown by Finn Balor on Seth Rollins. And this beatdown didn't just take place in the ring and didn't just take place at ringside with 3 coup de grace off of the stairs. And it looked like legit. It looked like Seth took these and he took them hard. So you ended up getting this going on in the back, and you made Finn look so strong. After that promo that we got last week, where Finn struggled to get through the promo because the crowd just took everything over, you needed to add some heat to Finn. This was a great way. I loved what Vince did here. I thought this was absolutely incredible. I thought Finn came out looking so much stronger, and now you look at this match with a little bit more intrigue and a little bit more interest. What did you think of Vince basically ripping everything up, and what did you think about that beginning of Raw? Because, again, I loved it. I think it made Finn look so much better, whereas last week we were like, well, not too interested in this. Like, it could be a good match, but not too interested. This made Finn look incredibly strong. What were your thoughts on the beginning of Raw?
Yeah, on one hand, I did want to see a match. I did like seeing Seth Rollins having opportunities to call out people and seeing who does come down. Yeah, you're right. I don't think Ciampa would have been really the right guy to come down because he was going to take an L. And his return, maybe just could have been also done a little bit better. But I do think exactly what you're saying in that, oh my goodness, Finn Balor comes out and destroys him as aggressive. And I love the way they played it where Seth Rollins is like, that's the guy I called out. I like it. And even though he took an ass whooping, he likes the fact that he's going to get a version of Finn Balor that can be the best version. And if he gets the W, will even give Seth Rollins a lot more credibility.
Yeah, and look, this whole thing was just trying to make this match interesting. Like, this is coming from a good place. This match should be more interesting than what it was leading into this week. And I think what happened this week really did help it make it look strong and did bring a level of intrigue to it. So I loved it. I thought what Vince did was incredible because we haven't been able to say that about anything that Vince touches. Usually Vince has the poo-poo touch and doesn't have the Midas touch. This, however, was pure gold. I loved it, thought it was great. You seem to have enjoyed it as well. Like I mentioned, we did have the return of Ciampa. Ciampa's been out of action with a hip labral tear. He's finally rehabbed from it. Reports are from Work Wrestling. Work Wrestling has been one of the newer wrestling sites that have been getting a lot of intel and a lot of information. They get a lot of things right. That information is that when Johnny Gargano comes back, we may have a reunion of DIY. Now, before we go down that rabbit hole, I do want to talk about Ciampa's match. Now, Ciampa was the guy who was supposed to take on Seth Rollins. They were supposed to get a ton of time. Sounds like they were supposed to get 45 minutes for a match. Instead, Miz calls out a guy. Miz is from Cleveland. Calls out a guy to come and fight whoever it is. He has an open challenge. Ciampa accepts it. I felt like this didn't necessarily work because the last time we seen Ciampa, he was with The Miz. The Miz and Ciampa were buddies last time we seen this. This to me felt weird. It felt forced. I didn't really like how this part of it played out, but I thought Ciampa came out. He looked like he had a little bit of ring rust, not as crisp as I would have liked to have seen, but it was what it was. What are your thoughts on DIY having this reunion, though? Johnny Gargano was supposed to be in the back and catering. He's a Cleveland guy. He never showed up. Felt like you could have done a little something with Gargano. Felt like you could have done a little bit more with Ciampa. I do have high aspirations of them as DIY getting back together and possibly challenging Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins. What's your take on possibly getting this NXT tag team and reuniting it on the main roster and doing it the right way?
Yeah, it would be good, but I'm not certain Gargano's over enough. I'm not certain that the situations are exactly where they need to be. It's always there. It's crazy. I just think that you have these characters that were really over in NXT, but on the main roster, you're not getting the juice. And Ciampa, exactly. It's like he was a vicious heel, and his injuries have kind of derailed things. I just think that for whatever reason, I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe it's just one of those things where Gargano had that deep connection with the NXT crowd, the matches that he had with the Undisputed Era and Adam Cole and the feuds that he had just resonate more there. And sometimes it is not just a horrible thing to say, look, your niche is just maybe in that range of a crowd of 4,000 or 5,000 in an intimate setting where you can have more, unfortunately, you hate to say NXT is the minors, but unfortunately at the main roster, some groups just sometimes fail to take off, and they keep trying to do this restart with Gargano and Ciampa, and it just really doesn't go anywhere. And I'm not certain, I don't have confidence right now that it is.
Yeah, and look, it's hard to kind of predict this and try to put this together because Ciampa's been out of action for so long. Gargano's been out of action. It's kind of been stop and start with Gargano. And like you said, it does feel like Johnny Wrestling has a bit of he has an uphill climb when it comes to connecting with the main roster. When he was in NXT, he was super over. Everybody loved him. It was one of those things, the guy was so charismatic in NXT, in that smaller setting, in that more intimate, enclosed setting. He was able to reach every fan and connect with them. Main roster, it tends to fall a little bit flat. It doesn't really seem to get over. And really, the last time we seen Ciampa, he was a heel. He was with Miz, and they were going around wrecking shop and beating up Logan Paul. So it's hard to kind of visualize where they're going to take this and what they're going to do with this, and how we're going to go in this direction. I think this is the actual story. I think this is the plan. For a couple of weeks now, you've had a couple of different promos with Johnny Wrestling in the back, and it's all been about he's coming back, it's going to be great. And we've talked about them reestablishing the old nucleus that Johnny Wrestling had when he was in NXT, but there's going to be an addition. I believe Ciampa is going to be that addition. I think they get back to tag team wrestling. I think it helps strengthen the tag team division, but right now I just don't necessarily see it working. I am excited for it, though, so we'll see kind of where it goes. Now, I thought Raw was pretty good overall. There was a lot of good things to take out of Raw. I thought SmackDown was a little bit down from where SmackDown usually is. I thought we had a nice opening bit with the Usos. I was into that. I liked what happened at the end because, again, it kind of continues that story. Usos ended up attacking Solo. So I think it adds just a little bit more. It just kind of carries that storyline along for the week. I don't really think you got anything great out of this week on SmackDown. But doing what we do, we delve into a couple of things, and it seems like we're going to London for Money in the Bank, and we're not taking Drew McIntyre, and we're not taking Sheamus. After watching SmackDown and seeing Sheamus get knocked out by Solo, it looked like they were trying to write him off, And look, last time that they were in the UK, Drew McIntyre and Sheamus tore the house down. These are two guys who take a lot of pride when they go overseas and they do this work, especially in the UK. They are incredibly close to Scotland. They're incredibly close to Ireland. So these guys, it's like next door for them. They're basically going home to show their family what they're doing. They're not going. This could be a bad idea. This could not work. What are your thoughts and what are your concerns with a guy like Drew McIntyre and a guy like Sheamus not going over to London for one of the bigger pay-per-views of the year?
Yeah, it's disappointing, man. It's crazy. You look at it and you say, man, Sheamus over, Drew McIntyre's taking a hiatus. It's unfortunate, but I look at it and I say, WWE has a hot market overseas. People want to see it because they are not over there as much. So while it sucks to say and to look at, I just think that when you look at the evolution of the characters, there's a lot more going on that doesn't involve Sheamus. It sucks that he's not exactly at the level that you and I would want, but he is at a level that when he returns, it'll be interesting to see how the storyline plays out. The Brawling Brutes are interesting, and it just sucks because, damn, you would think that the crowd would really love to see one of their own and, see European characters do their thing, especially characters that are over. But it's just not going to happen, and WWE will be fine, I think, with the Money in the Bank pay-per-view because they got some characters that are going to be over, especially on, I think the two ladder matches are going to be special.
Yeah, it does look like it's going to be a great pay-per-view. It looks like it's going to be a big-time show. It's going to have, obviously, that big-time feel. They're going to be in London, so the crowd's going to be crazy and ravenous. To me, it just feels like for those fans, for the London or the UK fan base, it feels like they're missing their guy, right? It feels like they're not getting the guy who is special to them. It's like CM Punk in Chicago, like, CM Punk is special in Chicago. I feel like Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, Finn Balor, Becky Lynch. I feel like these wrestlers are special in the UK, and I feel like that's kind of where they cut their teeth. So I feel like for the fans, you're going to love the show because the show is going to be jam-packed. But would you have liked it a little bit more if you got to see a guy like Drew McIntyre and a guy like Sheamus? I think you probably would. I think WWE will find some way to kind of squeeze one of them two in. Again, I don't really know what's going on with Drew McIntyre at this time. It sounded like it was an injury, then it sounded like it was a contract issue, and now it sounds like I don't know. So I'm not sure if Drew McIntyre actually is going to show up at this pay-per-view. But I can see them figuring out a way to squeeze Sheamus in. You have to remember you've got Butch, who is from the Brawling Brutes. He's going to be in the ladder match. You could see Sheamus possibly coming out with him, just kind of come out, wave to the crowd, walks Butch down, and then heads to the back. So he gets on air and gets on screen. We'll see what happens, though. I thought overall what we got from both Raw and SmackDown, I thought we got two good shows. I felt like SmackDown missed the mark from where it usually is at, though. What did you think overall from Raw and SmackDown? And then if you've got anything on NXT that you want to work in, I totally want to touch on what you want to touch on from NXT because Seth Rollins did go down to NXT, did take on Braun Breaker, and it did sound like he worked really well with some of the younger members of the roster. But overall, what were your thoughts on what we got from Raw, SmackDown, and then double back to what you want to talk about from NXT?
Yeah, no, I think that it was a decent week, and you look at Vince's involvement to bring it full circle. I thought that for a lot of times when Vince gets involved, that the shows don't take the turns that exactly we want. But I think this week, Vince's involvement maybe didn't help SmackDown as much as it did Raw, but they did do some things. And I just like the fact that, look, LA Knight shows up on Raw, he's over, and you realize that, okay, maybe they will, pay it off at Money in the Bank. It's either going to be LA Knight or one other performer or Bronson Reed. I think it's one of those two. You look at, those are the two up-and-coming stars in the world of the WWE, and I think they're doing a good job. Man, they're making Bronson Reed look like a true monster. So I like the character development of some of the middle of the road characters, and that in the mid card you're trying to elevate. And NXT, yeah, Seth Rollins, it was really crazy, man. The performer that they showed a picture that he worked with like 10 years ago, and now the dude is a wrestler and holding up that trophy. That was really special. And the match with Braun Breaker was fluid, natural. I thought that Braun Breaker gets a lot of rub off of Seth Rollins, and it was a great match just to see Carmelo Hayes, to see everybody interacting with Seth Rollins. And Seth's promo that they showed online after, special, to realize that, yeah, he can go down to NXT and do his thing. And it was just a really good week, I think, of programming for WWE.
I think you have a really special wrestler there in Seth Rollins. I think you also have a special wrestler in Braun Breaker, a guy who can elevate his game. And look, you're going with one of the best that are on a level that's above you, and you can carry it. And you don't look out of place. You don't look sloppy. You don't look slow. You don't miss your spots. So I think it's a huge nod for a dude like Braun Breaker. And very soon you'll be seeing Braun Breaker on your television screens if you watch Raw and SmackDown. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where all that goes. But again, awesome to see a guy like Seth Rollins go down, work with some of the younger members of the roster, put on a great show, and do some really great things. Overall, I thought it was a really good week of wrestling from WWE. We've got a lot to get into with AEW. AEW debuted Collision last week. I thought Collision was... I'm just going to be frank with you, man. I was bored with Collision. It was basically 2 hours of wrestling on a Saturday night, and I was like, all right, well, I'm here. And there was nothing that really made me pop. CM Punk didn't make me pop. CM Punk's promo didn't make me pop. Them taking the belt off of Wardlow didn't make me pop. It was just kind of like a couple of matches. They were good matches. Nothing really got me to really stand up and say, oh my God, this is awesome. It to me felt like this was a debuting show. And it felt like it was debuting wrestlers. You had guys that we haven't seen in months, and this is their first action. You got to see Miro for the first time in what has felt like a year. You got to see Andrade in what has felt like a half a year. You obviously got to see CM Punk, which has been over 9 months. So you got to see these wrestlers that you haven't seen in forever. Basically, they're like Fabergé eggs that they've taken out of their case and they put them in the ring, and you finally get to see them. And it's been a while. There's no storyline that helps back up what these guys have been doing or where these guys have been. And I think that was the real downside for me. For me, it was you kind of getting reintroduced to wrestlers that you know about, and you know that they've been hurt, or you know that they've basically been on the shelf, but there's no real storyline there. They've come out and they've given you matches, and the matches were good, but there was nothing really there. Nothing really seemed to build towards whatever was going to come next. The only thing that you could say that really seemed to build towards something that might come next was CM Punk, and CM Punk talking about how he didn't lose his title or his championship. And it seems like at some point we're going to have a MJF CM Punk feud. So for me, I was bored by Collision, and honestly, I couldn't wait for Collision to get over because I was like, "Come on, let's go." What was your reaction to Collision? Did you love Collision? Were you bored by it? Am I like one of the only people who was bored by it, or what was your take on it? What was your reaction to watching this new wrestling show by AEW?
See, I was a little different. I was a little more excited. I was like, "Oh, okay." Punk had a zinger, calling the Young Bucks, calling them out counterfeit Bucks, and I looked at it like, okay, what's this presentation going to look like? I liked the presentation. I thought the crowd was into it. I thought that obviously the announce team was different. It sucked that JR just, for whatever reason, didn't bring it.
He sounded horrible.
He sounded horrible, and he apologized for it, which is unique as well.
This is something I think is awesome about Collision. They've got a completely different announce team. Kevin Kelly is great. Nigel McGuinness is fantastic. I think once those guys kind of get more working reps together, and like these guys worked together in ROH years ago, I think they are going to be the announce team for AEW because Kevin Kelly is awesome, and Nigel McGuinness is very, very good. We don't need JR. JR just needs to go, and we've talked about this a number of times. He needs to go away. It's too much.
It is, especially after he took a fall earlier that morning. It was a rough day for JR, but I thought Switchblade Jay White had a good showing. I thought the match with FTR was really solid, And hey, if we call that Juice Robinson's going to lay down, he's got to lay down, and he did. So I got to laugh. I got to laugh. I just chuckled out of it. So for me, it was, yes, exactly. I just thought it was a professional debut of a show, and now I'm curious to see how it moves forward. Yeah, it just, you looked at it and you say, okay, did you have that major pop moment? No, you really didn't, but it was good to see some of the performers that we did see start to acclimate themselves back. And it'll be fun to see how storylines evolve on Collision moving forward. I like the setup. I like the new vibe. And even though, like I said, you're easing into it, 800,000 people did get a chance to see it. So I thought it was a good enough debut for a show that you're starting to kick off now with AEW, trying to highlight more talent.
Yeah, and I think you said the right word there. Collision does have a bit of a different vibe. It feels different. This is important. This is good. You want this. You want this show to feel different than Dynamite. You want this show to feel different than Rampage. You want this show to be its own, have its own identity. And I think it does have that, from the color scheme, the logo, the intro music. I think all of it. It just feels different. It feels fun. To me, this first show just left a lot to be desired, felt a little bit flat. Something else that left a lot to be desired and felt a little bit flat was Dynamite, in my estimation. Look, this pay-per-view is massive. This pay-per-view is a pay-per-view that we tend to look forward to every single year, because you get some of the best from New Japan and you get to pair them with AEW, and it shows how good the world of wrestling really can be when you get two of the bigger promotions in the world going at it and wrestling each other, and you get dream matches. And that's what this is all about. It's all about dream matches. I felt like Dynamite missed the mark. This is a monster pay-per-view. This is your go-home show. I don't think it was good enough. I don't think it did a good enough job. For me, the moment that got me hyped was when you heard the 2 quarters bounce off the table and Okada came out. And I was like, man, Okada's just so freaking good. Like, Okada is great. Okada has a presence about him. But that was the highlight of the show for me. And that was the final 65 seconds of the program. Like, I watched a 2-hour wrestling show and I got hyped for 65 seconds of it. What did you think of Dynamite? And was it good enough for this type of a pay-per-view to be the go-home show, to send you out so you're going to spend $50, $65 to buy this pay-per-view? Because in my estimation, they dropped the ball. They really dropped the ball with this go-home show. I would make the argument, a show that we don't regularly watch, Rampage, was better than what we got for Dynamite. And that's saying a whole lot, because Rampage usually sucks. This week's Rampage, I felt like, was better. I felt like you got a little bit more continuation of stories, and it made it a little bit more interesting for what we're going to get for this pay-per-view. What was your estimation of Dynamite, and did it hit the mark for you?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I just felt like, okay, you have this major event, and look, and here's, I think, probably the reason why. I'm curious to get your sense of what they could have did differently. But I think that they understand that the people that are going to watch Forbidden Door are the hardcore marks. They know these characters. We're not going to develop all these characters. I just felt like when you look at, if there's a casual fan that doesn't know some of these guys, and we talked about this last year as well, that you could have did more video packages. You could have did more of a background story of some of these guys and why they're important. It's just like I said. I just think that the AEW crowd and the AEW backstage people assume, look, this is a niche show. We know the crowd's going to be apeshit because the people that would buy a ticket to come to this show are going to know everybody and they're going to want to pop. So they don't invest in doing a lot to move the storylines along. So it's just basically a lot of, I want to fight you, I want to fight you. And Jack, I think it's highlighted by how Jack Perry's feud coming up is played out. And I think you're absolutely right that they could always do more. But how would they have done it differently if they had a moment to elevate this card on a go-home show?
So I don't necessarily think that you needed to have CM Punk on this show. We're going to get into that a little bit later on. I don't think that was necessary. I think the big feud, the money-making feud on this pay-per-view card is Will Ospreay, is Kenny Omega. Now, you're supposed to get something on Collision on Saturday night. We're recording this Saturday morning. So you're supposed to get something on Collision Saturday night, and that's supposed to supposedly want you to buy this pay-per-view. So we'll have to kind of wait and see. But I think that is the big money match. That is the match that everybody is kind of talking about. That is the match that I think all of us want to see. That is the match that I think you and I both feel like if you're going to put your money down, you're going to put your money down because you want to watch that particular match. And I think you could have did something a little bit more than what we got with Kenny Omega. You could have did a little bit more than what we got with Will Ospreay. You could have actually have had them at the arena, and they could have did something face to face, in person. Instead, what you got was a vignette with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Eddie Kingston comes in, and look, I love Eddie Kingston. I think Eddie Kingston's great. But I don't need to hear Eddie Kingston tell me about how he doesn't trust the Elite, and he's got a guy that he trusts even less than the Elite, but he's worked with them before. And look, I love the fact that it was Ishii that got announced as their fifth man for their feud against the BCC. But all that being said, I needed to see Kenny Omega. I needed to see Will Ospreay. I needed to see these guys face off and maybe throw a punch or two. And I felt like that could have made it better. I love seeing Okada come down. I love seeing Okada take out Wheeler Yuta. Like I said, the best time of this show was the final 60 seconds for me was with Okada. So I think you could have done a little bit more. You could have given us the guy who's really selling this pay-per-view, or the two guys that are selling this pay-per-view, and that's Will Ospreay and that's Kenny Omega. I think that would have made it a little bit better. You could have did that somewhere right around that 9 o'clock hour, and then you at the 10 o'clock, just before the 10 o'clock hour, you give us Okada. So you kind of bookend that final hour. It gets you kind of to that crescendo, you peak, then you can come back down, and then you peak again. And I think that sends everybody home a little bit more happy. It'll be, like I said, it'll be interesting to see what they do with Collision. You ready for some predictions? You want to do some predictions here?
Let's go. It's the Forbidden Door, baby. I want to know how this should shake out. It's going to be a great card. The crowd's going to go crazy. I think that last year's show lived up to the billing, and this one will as well.
Yeah, most definitely. It's a jam-packed card. This should be a great show. I'm looking forward to it. You're looking forward to it. We kicked the whole thing off with the pre-show. We've got the Women's Owen Hart Foundation Tournament quarterfinal. You've got Athena versus Billy Starks. I don't even know where to go with this one. I think Athena is a great wrestler. You haven't really seen her wrestle for some time now. Billy Starks is a young up-and-comer. I feel like they want to push her, but I don't think they absolutely know what they're doing with her yet. I'm going to go with Athena just because she is the veteran, and I think she's going to put on a great show. What are your thoughts?
Agree. Athena's holding it down at Ring of Honor. It is a little bit surprising. That's where she has been, but I think that she can handle her business, and of course she's going to advance.
All right, awesome. We move on to the match that we were just talking about, the match that we feel like is going to carry this pay-per-view, the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship match. You've got Kenny Omega, who will be defending his belt against Will Ospreay. How do you see this one playing out?
Man, like Kenny had said, Will Ospreay, when he's in the ring, is just so fluid, so amazing. I think it's time to Kenny to drop the belt. I think that Omega is amazing and things like that, but I think it's time to give Will Ospreay his shine. So I think it'll be Will Ospreay that goes over.
Yeah, I think it's Will Ospreay as well. I think this belt goes back to Japan with Will. Look, I could see us having a best-of-3 series between these guys and them just coming back together for another great match. But I'm going to go Will Ospreay as well. I think it's going to be a fantastic match. I think it's going to be great. It should be everything that we have built it to be. We have another dream match on this card. This is what we're talking about with this pay-per-view. It gives you dream matches. We've got Bryan Danielson versus Okada. Look, little backstory. It sounds like Danielson, the reason he hasn't really been in the ring, the reason he hasn't really been physical, sounds like he's dealing with some injury issues. He's a little bit banged up from Anarchy in the arena. I'm going to go with Okada in this match. There was this report that was sent out where there are certain wrestlers that New Japan just does not allow to lose. And I know the way Tony Khan books all of his guys, all the AEW guys always end up going over all the AAA guys, goes over all of the indie guys, goes over all of the New Japan guys. I think there are a select few New Japan guys. Okada's one of those guys that he just doesn't lose. I think Okada beats Danielson in this match, and I think it's going to be a fantastic match.
Oh, I can't wait.
How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. Okada versus Danielson. It's going to tear the house down. Hopefully Danielson's injuries don't limit the potential of this match, but I think this one will tear the house down, and I see Okada winning as well. I love the fact that when he comes out, I just think that people were like going crazy, and when he's just got a nice presence, he's got a really special talent that I think this match can also really doesn't have to involve a lot of high spots. Can be a lot of psychology, can be a lot of false finishes. The build up to the match, the way they're going to tell the story. Oh, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see how they put this match together.
Yeah, it should be a fantastic match. It'll be interesting to kind of see, like you said, how they put it together, the psychology that's involved with it. We then have MJF defending his AEW World Championship against Tanahashi. Again, like I had mentioned, back in the day, there was a select few guys who would not ever lose. Tanahashi was on that list. Tanahashi is no longer on that list. I think MJF keeps his world championship. MJF wins this. It'll probably be something underhanded and dastardly that he does to keep the belt, but I'm going to go MJF over Tanahashi.
Yeah, that would be hilarious. Tanahashi wins the AEW belt. No, it's going to be MJF. It's going to be great. Yes, there's going to be hilarity, hijinks. There's going to be some kind of cheating involved, and maybe a feud that emerges for maybe New Japan takes an opportunity to move forward another kind of feud with having another performer come in and maybe cost Tanahashi his opportunity. So it's going to be MJF. It's going to be a good match. I can't wait to see it too.
Most definitely. Should be fantastic. We then have Sonata, who looks like he is a legit champion. Sonata's got that look, bro. He looks so unreal. He's amazing looking. It's great. Carries that IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. He looks fantastic. What you've seen on Rampage with him, great. Like, that's the real deal. He is the guy. He'll be taking on Jack Perry, defending his championship. I don't see any way. I don't see any chance. I don't see no way Jack Perry stands a chance to win this match. I've got Sonata winning it. I got Sonata dominating it. It should be, I'm going to say it should be good because the guys involved, Jack Perry can do a lot, but Sonata is unreal. It sounds like they want to turn Jack Perry heel. So whether it's with Hook or whether it's something that happens in this match, just be on the lookout for that. But I'm going to go with Sonata to keep his IWGP championship.
Yeah, I like the build-up where they're both like, I've never seen your matches. And Sonata with Jack and Jack with Sonata, I thought was hilarious. But I thought the build-up for this has been decent. And, yeah, Jack Perry's going to lay down, and it's going to be great to see.
We then have the BCC with Takeshita and Umio taking on the Elite with Eddie Kingston and Ishii. This should be an incredible match. It is a 5v5 match. How do you see this one playing out? Because I think this might be the one where we maybe differ. This might be the one where we just don't know. We just don't know because you could make a case for everybody in this match to win this match. You could write 9 different stories coming out of this match. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, my mission and the note that I wrote was just make sure that you highlight Takeshita as well. And the dude is awesome. He looks great. I think that his role naturally has come to be a heel. I think Jon Moxley in the promo that was cut on Dynamite did a good job. And I just think that it's going to be the BCC that wins. They need to win it because they're a faction that is just really dominant. They're doing a lot of good things. I just want to see Takeshita be highlighted and have his opportunity to get his shit over, and it will. I just think that when you look at rising stars, Takeshita has it, man. The size, the speed, the natural look, now the working with the heel manager, and now part of the BCC. I think that his affiliation will definitely take his career to the next level, especially in AEW.
Yeah, I think you have to highlight Takeshita in this. I think the way this kind of unravels and unfolds, and it sucks to say this, but I think it'll be because of Eddie Kingston. I think Eddie Kingston will do something. There'll be something that happens between him and maybe Jon Moxley. Maybe he goes a step too far. I know he hates Claudio. They have history from way back in the day. But I'm going to go BCC as well, just because, again, I think it's something to do with Eddie Kingston. I can see him being the one loose string that kind of pulls all the threads apart on the fabric that is Team Elite. So we'll see what takes place with this one. It should be a fantastic match. Should be great. You've got Chris Jericho versus Minoru Suzuki and Sammy Guevara versus Darby Allin, Sting, and to be determined. Could possibly be Naito. And I think that would be fantastic. That was the original person that I thought it was going to be. Chris Jericho and Naito had a little bit of a run when Chris Jericho was over in New Japan when he was doing his Painmaker gimmick. Hopefully he doesn't show up with his Painmaker gimmick in this match. There should only be really one person with face paint on, and that is Sting and Darby Allin. So two people, I guess. But it could be Naito. We'll find out Saturday night on Collision. I'm going to go with Darby Allin and Sting, and we're going to put TBA, but I think it's Naito who's going to be announced. Who do you have winning this one?
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be Chris Jericho. And I think Sammy Guevara and the team, because you look at it and you say, which New Japan team could take a loss and then not have a problem? I think this feud has more of an ability to kind of sprinkle off into several other feuds. But I know that Sammy Guevara, that dynamic with his relationship with the crew and kind of how that looks, and if it doesn't go my way, I could see maybe a building of that again. But I just think that Sammy Guevara, Chris Jericho are going to cheat to win, and that's what the heels do. They're going to cheat, and they're going to get over, and they're going to get the W.
All right, it'll be interesting. See what happens. That so far is the one match that we're completely different. I think as we kind of work our way through the rest of this card, and yeah, there's still more of it, we're going to end up different on at least maybe one, maybe two of these. So we'll see what takes place. I'm just going to pick for you for the next one. It's CM Punk versus Kojima. I've got CM Punk winning this. I believe you have CM Punk winning this.
Yes.
This is for the men's quarterfinal in the Owen Hart tournament. So no big deal there. You then have Orange Cassidy defending his AEW International Championship versus Daniel Garcia versus Shibata versus Zack Sabre Jr. I'm going to go with Orange Cassidy, but I could see him losing. And this is the one match where I think you might... Actually, no, I'm going to change my pick because we need to have a title change, right? We haven't had a title change on this at all. And I don't think we're going to get a title change in our next match that we're going to talk about. So we need a title change. I think we borrow Shibata for a little bit. Shibata is a badass. I'm going to go Shibata winning this. He ends up taking the belt off of Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy's been carrying that belt for a while. He's essentially elevated that championship belt. He's been fantastic. I'm going Shibata to beat Orange Cassidy, Daniel Garcia, and Zack Sabre Jr.
No, I disagree completely. If they do decide to take it, it would be Zack Sabre Jr., but I don't think so. I think it's going to be Orange Cassidy. I think that the AEW loves featuring him in the way in which they do, and if he drops the belt, it's going to be to somebody in the company. So I think we have a retain, and we don't need to have... This card is not about moving titles. This card is about getting people over and telling some stories. And, man, this match has a chance to be one of those matches where you sit down and start to finish, don't blink. And I think that I'm really liking what Orange Cassidy has done with the belt, and let's see him continue with another quality matchup in a title defense.
All right, we'll see what takes place. This is, again, one of those ones that could sway and give one of us the point here. You've got Toni Storm taking on Willow Nightingale for the AEW World Championship, AEW Women's World Championship. I'm going to go with Toni Storm in this. I don't think there's a reason to take the belt off of her. I think Willow Nightingale is fantastic as the IWGP Women's Open Champion, but I don't think there's a reason to slap another belt on her. I do feel like AEW is kind of bobbled and botched how good Willow Nightingale could be because she's organically over and everybody loves her. They just really haven't done enough with her. But that being said, I think she gets fed to Toni Storm. I think Toni Storm retains, and I could see Saraya playing a role in this match.
Yeah, exactly. And I like what Toni Storm has brought to the company. I think she's a character along with the women that also deserve to be highlighted. So she's got to have a good match, and let's hope it is.
All right, last match I'm going to pick for you again. You got Adam Cole winning over Filthy Tom Lawler.
Yeah.
Filthy Tom Lawler, those who don't know, wrestles in New Japan, an indie guy. If you listen to Wrestling Observer Radio, he is on Wrestling Observer Radio. That's how I'm most familiar with him. He's good. And this should be a good match, but Adam Cole's winning this match, just how it's going to go.
No doubt.
At this moment in time, Doc holds a 1-point lead in calling the card. We differ on 2 picks. You've got Orange Cassidy retaining. I've got Shibata defeating him for the AEW International Championship. And then you've got Chris Jericho, Minoru Suzuki, and Sammy Guevara defeating Darby Allin, Sting, and whomever. I've got Darby Allin, Sting, and whomever defeating Chris Jericho, Minoru Suzuki, and Sammy Guevara. Should be a hell of a pay-per-view. I know you're interested in it. I'm interested in it. Should be great. Before we get into some news and notes, I do want to know what your show of the week was.
Man, that's tough. It is tough, but I look at it and I say the storyline with the bloodline is taking its rightful place at the top. I think SmackDown, I know it wasn't the best show in your eyes, but I thought it did enough in my eyes in terms of the rest of the competition to get the point for the best show of the week. I think that you get the anticipation of what's happening, the Usos attacking Solo, and I just think that that's just amazing, the Civil War, where that's going to go.
All right, I'm going to go a little off the board here. I really enjoyed Rampage this week. I thought Rampage was good. I thought you got some storylines that got a little bit fleshed out and built up for this pay-per-view. I thought what we got overall, it was fast, it was quick, it's an hour of your time. I'm going to go Rampage. So we'll split the point. SmackDown will get a half, and Rampage finally gets on the board, gets a half. That tells you how bad Rampage has been and how weird wrestling was this week. It was good, but I don't think this was the best week of wrestling. I felt like things could have been done just a little bit better, but I thought Rampage, out of everything that we've seen, it would have been Rampage or it would have been NXT. So it would have been the minor league wrestling of the two big brands.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go with Rampage. I thought either NXT or Rampage kind of carried the boat here this week. You want some news and notes?
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
A former NXT standout has a trial run with AEW. Chris Hero was in Chicago and was scheduled to work with AEW on a trial basis. Further details of the arrangement were revealed by PW insiders, stating Chris Hero was backstage producing matches for Ring of Honor and was on the headset for several matches, including the Chicago street fight that closed the taping. He will be in for a few weeks after being suggested as a potential addition to the team by some of the other producers, but it's not official yet. Fightful actually reported before the taping that he was working behind the scenes at the taping. TV tapings for ROH took place before the debut episode of Collision. Chris Hero had a storied career in independent wrestling, and saw him join WWE in 2011, making his NXT debut as Cassius Ohno in 2013, only to be released on good terms in November of that year. He would return once again in NXT in 2016 and remain with the company until his release in April of 2020. Some WWE pay-per-view news was made this week on the Pat McAfee Show. The 2023 WWE Fastlane Premium Live event has been officially announced. During Paul Heyman's appearance on the Pat McAfee Show, it was announced that Fastlane will be held in Indianapolis, Indiana on October 7th. This will be the first Fastlane event since 2021, which featured Roman Reigns defending his Universal Championship against Daniel Bryan in the main event. This has been one of those pay-per-views that kind of they hit the snooze on, and they just really haven't done anything with it. They're bringing it back. So also be the first Fastlane event that has not taken place in March, with the event previously being used to signify the road to WrestleMania. So they've even moved it around on the calendar, so it should be interesting. Now, lots of CM Punk news. Sounds like the return of CM Punk has brought up some upset feelings. This was to be expected, but maybe not for these reasons. Speaking on Post Wrestling, Dave Meltzer of Wrestling Observer talked about the impression he received from the locker room regarding Punk being back in the company. Speaking about Punk being set for Dynamite and the perception of him as a whole, Meltzer said, with Punk being on the show tonight, one of the top guys was just like, we were told that we would not have to deal with Punk except for on pay-per-views. But here he is, week one. There is a lot of divisiveness that it's so frustrating to me because I see it so closely and I feel it shouldn't be there. It's worse now than it has been. It hasn't gotten better. Right now, it's at a pretty bad point again. Meltzer also talked to a top AEW name that described the situation in the locker room as being a ticking time bomb following Punk's return. Meltzer wrote in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, but one top name noted to us that they went home after the show on Wednesday in a bad mood, and even with the key people kept apart and not on the same show, described the fear of this being a ticking time bomb that will not have a happy ending. It doesn't help that Punk made his comeback on Saturday, June 17th, with a promo that ruffled some feathers and conducted an interview with ESPN that had to be heavily edited and okayed by AEW before it was printed. the joys of working with people who think they're better than you and are owed something. That is CM Punk for you guys. And we've got Sonata taking shots here. Sonata's not happy about his Forbidden Door opponent. Speaking to Tokyo Sport, IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Sonata spoke of his open challenge for the June 25th pay-per-view being answered by Jack Perry. However, he is not thrilled with the prospect of facing the 25-year-old. Sonata said, "I have no knowledge of Jack Perry. It's sad to see someone like that challenge for the IWGP. It is an open challenge. Really, it's that easy to decide." Sonata also stated that his belief that the IWGP Championship was worth more than the AEW Championship and should be treated as such, saying, "It's the IWGP. I think it's worth more than the AEW Championship." Mincing zero words here. The AEW World Championship, on the other hand, will be defended by MJF against 8-time IWGP Heavyweight Champion Hiroshi Tanahashi, as MJF officially accepted the challenge this past week on Dynamite. There is a bit of disparity when you look at the wrestlers involved in their legacies with these matches. Obviously, Jack Perry, very, very young, has never won a belt of any recognition. I think he was tag team champion, but nothing individual. Sonata carrying that belt, looks like a champion, is a champion, has the feel of being a big time player. Tanahashi they referred to him as the ace for a reason. He was the guy. He was the guy in New Japan. He's going up against MJF. It's weird the way that Tony Khan has booked this. Usually you want to give a wrestler with some status, with a little bit of clout, to go against the top of another organization. Instead, you're putting Jack Perry in that spot. It'll be weird to see what happens. Do we have a return date for a WWE superstar? Last week, we talked about Carlito telling several independent promoters that he was pulling out of bookings due to re-signing with WWE. In an update per PW Insider Elite, multiple WWE sources have stated that the July 7th episode of SmackDown at Madison Square Garden is being targeted for Carlito's return to the company. Carlito became an honorary member of the LWO when he aided Bad Bunny at Backlash, so him being linked to the group makes sense. Carlito was also spotted in Orlando doing something with the company. Carlito would be the first main roster hire by the company since Vince McMahon's return back in January. There was a hiring freeze. And then finally, one WWE star returns and one AEW star leaves. Fuego del Sol, who has competed in AEW since 2020, recently announced his official departure from the company, with the 27-year-old giving thanks to his former employer and announcing that he will now be taking his future bookings elsewhere. In a touching tweet, AEW's talent Emi Sakura posted a message of gratitude to Fuego, giving him credit for assisting her in developing a key piece in her in-ring arsenal. Sakura tweeted, "He taught me the moonsault press, Universal Studios Orlando, last year's dark taping match. He gave me time before his match. He was a role model, helped me many times, and gave me a lot of advice again and again. And it's done. Remember him when you see this move. Thank you, Fuego. See you soon." There was video clips of them working together and her perfecting her moves. Seems like he was a good dude backstage and never really got the run in AEW. Never really connected with the crowd and never really got put over. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. But that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes. We've got a fantastic pay-per-view taking place on Sunday. I'm excited. You're excited. Everybody check that out. You can get it on, I think, Bleacher Report or wherever you get your pay-per-views at.
Absolutely great recap. Great segment of news. Always look forward to seeing what's going on in the world of professional wrestling. Little quick news and notes. Maybe, just maybe, and we'll see how it happens. The Miz on Tuesday will be in Detroit to partake in the Par 3 Challenge along with Tom Izzo and Barry Sanders. So I will be hopefully on site. So I'm going to try to find my way to meet and greet The Miz, hopefully, and have an opportunity maybe to get a fantasy football question in, get a wrestling question in, and a Lions question in. And how great will that be when two awesome individuals stand together and have an opportunity to meet? We'll see, and we'll check back next week and see if that, at the very least, we'll see how he golfs in Detroit. So I thought it was a good pull for the Rocket Mortgage Classic, and I love breaking down the world of wrestling. Can't wait to see how this pay-per-view shakes out. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you have a completely different view of how Forbidden Door is going to shake out, if you are a bigger fan of Rampage than I was, or if you feel like Adam has been way too harsh on CM Punk, hit us up at Detroit Podcast. Anywhere that you listen to your favorite audio content, make sure you subscribe to Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, the mouth-breathing monster mouth of Macomb, John Macaroon. Can't wait to break it all down next week on the latest edition of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast.